these rich countries. So, rich countries, developed countries should share their technology, should transfer technology to developing and poor countries, or least developed countries. So, this is a new challenge so far as a new trend in disaster management. So, there is a growing demand all over the world that suppose issue of climate change, issue of greenhouse gas emission, issue of controlling the temperature, issue of limiting greenhouse emission. We need technology. So that technology should be provided by the developed countries. But that should not be another area of business by the developed countries in the developing countries. The developed countries should make it free or at a very nominal cost. They should supply this technology to developing countries. Vulnerability and socioeconomic disadvantages. Here, what does it mean? It means that the socially, economically, culturally vulnerable groups, weak groups, disadvantaged sections, marginalized groups are becoming victims of natural disasters or disasters more in comparison to other developed sections of the society or rich sections of the society. Suppose there is a natural disaster in a coastal district in Odisha, whether it is cyclone or flood, whatever it is. The most or the worst victims are the poor people, daily wage laborers, and particularly there are also lower caste people. So, in terms of social segregation, that is caste division, and in terms of gender, you will see in all disasters, women are the worst sufferers. In terms of gender discrimination, and also in terms of resources discrimination, that is poor and rich, you will find the vulnerable groups are the poor people, are the weak people, are the disadvantaged people. So there is a correlation, a positive correlation between socially, economically, culturally disadvantaged groups and vulnerability of these groups. So those who are vulnerable, we will be discussing in the coming chapters regarding vulnerability. But here it is pointed that vulnerability is a crucial factor in disaster management. We must map, we must analyze, we must identify who are vulnerable and why they are vulnerable, and how their vulnerability can be reduced. So this can be reduced not by relief operation or post-disaster management, but by policy intervention by the government, by the society, by the non-government agencies to reduce their inequality, to reduce their poverty, and to reduce discrimination. So you must find out what are the causes of discrimination. So in every disaster, you will find the poor people are sufferers. In India, the lower caste people are sufferers. The women are sufferers. So, in terms of priorities of the family, you will find in post-disaster management, these sections, those who are disadvantaged or discriminated, they are sufferers. So, that if you identify there is a linkage between disaster management and vulnerable people, then we can identify them, and we must develop a policy to reduce their vulnerability. And this is another new trend. Then we have community resilience that we'll be discussing here. Yesterday also I had discussed regarding community resilience. So community resilience can be developed by active participation of the people. The community must be involved, and there must be democratic involvement of the community in disaster management and in preparedness for disaster management and in post-disaster management or reconstruction. Unless you take community into confidence, you cannot be 100% successful in disaster management or disaster prevention. So that is most important, community resilience. So this community resilience has become globally, not in Odisha or India or anywhere, globally become a central theme of disaster management. So community is being brought to the center stage in the strategy for disaster management. That is very most important. Then we have capacities of the vulnerable communities, not their vulnerability. Their capacity should be developed. That was the goal of capacity of whom? Capacity of the vulnerable people, groups. Their capacity must be developed by the state, by the society through policy interventions so that they can resist, they can fight, they can involve themselves in managing the disaster, in preventing disaster, and in also post-disaster management. And then we can be successful. So these are the new trends in disaster management all over the globe. And the need of public policy. There is a need, requirement of public policy for this. Unless state intervenes, or the group of states that is under United Nations or any group of states, they should intervene collectively, keeping in mind these new trends or new factors in disaster management. Then there is development planning. So we know that there is a new word in last 20 years, that is development planning. That means planning must be for the inclusive development of the society and of the people. What is inclusive development? Inclusive development means in disaster management. So postmodern trends I have already discussed, but again I am giving you the important ideas. The postmodern cultural values, that is democratic values, pluralist values, values based on equality, are becoming part of disaster management. So humanitarian approach, this should be the objective or basis of any kind of disaster management. Then accountability, participatory approach, then decentralization. These are also postmodernist values that should be reflected in disaster management. That means any disaster management plan must be accountable, must be participated. Then participation of the community, participation of the common people in that management. Not that you will decide at the top level in air conditioned room and thrust this model in disaster management on the people. So this is not the new trend. New trend is that there must be involvement, active participation of the common people in disaster management, in the implementation of the project, in the development of the model or paradigm, any new paradigm, and also in post-mortem assessment of the reconstruction process or disaster management. Then you can find or map what are the lacunas, what are the deficiencies, and how they can be improved. Then there are also this aesthetic and spiritual aspects of life. This is a new postmodernist trend. That means aesthetic values and spiritual values, ethical values must be there in disaster management. Then this local knowledge and skill. Earlier, what was happening? Earlier, the topmost engineers, scientists, they were developing the plan, they are developing the paradigm. But now there is a trend, new trend, that the local knowledge, local skills of the community, of the people, must be taken into account in protecting the environment, in managing the disaster or in disaster management. Those values which are scientific or which are practical, they must be taken into consideration, or they must be taken into application while we are managing a disaster. Because the communities since last hundreds of years, out of their experience, out of their knowledge, out of their skill, have developed their own mechanisms to manage disasters. And we must learn from them. It is not that new scientific techniques or new scientific discoveries or theories are sufficient in themselves to prevent any disaster, whether it is flood, earthquake, or cyclone, and can manage any disaster. It's not like that. So communities have their own knowledge, own skill, etc., for managing disasters. Police should be an asset to the entire country. The police, that is a postmodernist approach, that there is the need of a teamwork. So anybody in single means in any single organization, whether it is district administration, whether it is local administration, alone cannot be successful in managing disaster. There must be a group approach or collective approach to the management of the disaster. That means there must be the involvement of all sections of people, all groups of people, all groups of institutions, We need state and its agencies, we need global agencies, we need local agencies, and we need the role of community or help of community or involvement of community. So in toto or in a combination, we can be successful in managing the disaster. This is another approach of postmodernism and new trends. Then we have this uh, hierarchy. In bureaucracy, you will find there is a hierarchy. What is hierarchy? Top to bottom level. So here, if you involve people and there is a collective approach, democratic approach, hierarchy will be diluted. Next recent trend is sustainable development. What is sustainable development? I have already told you, but you can take this definition in writing also. That is Brownland Commission in 1989 defined sustainable development as that development which means the needs of the people are present without compromising the needs of the future generations to meet their own needs. That means we will fulfill our needs. At the same time, we must protect the needs of our future generations. So there must be a judicious use of natural resources that is limited. That is what sustainable development means. So this new trend is sustainable development. Then there is other ethical and utilitarian values. Then this all hazards approach, that means inclusive approach, a holistic strategy, inclusive strategy. And there are various regions I already have discussed. So this chapter is over, that is chapter 3. Then we'll be shifting to chapter 4, which is disaster preparedness in Indian context. First, let us see what is the global context. Then we come to the Indian context. The topic is disaster preparedness. How prepared are we as a country in India and as a globe in the world to face a disaster? So at the global level, I have already told you that the decade was declared as the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, INDNR. That is from 1919 to 2000. The decade is 1990 to 2000. It was declared in 1989 by United Nations. So this means the entire community of states under the aegis of United Nations decided to give more importance to this disaster management. Why? Because it was realized that recurring disasters all over the world, in different parts of the world, in different states, different geographical areas, are actually eating into our vitals as a society. As a human society is facing serious crisis. There is a loss of life, loss of property, and loss of resources. So we are being backward. Our development is being delayed. It is being given a break. So that's why at the global level, we need a global strategy to face and how this can be reduced. So unless you are prepared for that, you cannot do this. You have to be prepared. That is preparedness. So at the global level, there is the preparedness for mitigation of the disasters. And what is the objective of this plan or program? That is to have a comprehensive assessment, national assessment and global assessment. So in this decade, in the United Nations tried to have 3-4 objectives, goals of this international importance or global importance of disaster preparedness. One is to have access of the nation, needs of the nation in case of a disaster. Then mitigation plans at the national level and local level. There must be plans at the national level as well as local level. How can we mitigate it? Then ready access to global, regional, national and local warning systems. That means United Nations tried to develop this interconnectivity among the global warning system, national warning system, and local warning system. Suppose there is a cyclone in the Gopalpur Sea or in the Bay of Bengal, and American Meteorological Department through its satellite pictures is sending signals to the Indian government that there is a possibility of a severe cyclonic storm in Bay of Bengal, which is 1,000 kilometers or 500, 700 or 800 kilometers away from Gopalpur beach or Puri beach or Baleshwar beach. So it may hit the coast in Odisha, coast in Odisha within 5, 6 or 7 days. So we use the global warning system, then we have national warning system, then we have local warning system. So there is, if there is a interconnectedness or connectivity between the two at the global level, then there will be early warning system so that our preparedness will be foolproof, developed, will be more scientific and objective. This is second. Third is Yokohama strategy. That is, Yokohama is a place in Japan where there is a conference in 1994. And that conference gave importance to saving of human lives and protecting property. So the objective of the conference, how lives can be saved when there is a huge loss of human life in a disaster, then how this can be reduced, how this can be saved, and how properties can be saved, individual property as well as collective or state property. So this was the slogan of Yokohama Conference or Yokohama Strategy. Then Hoigo framework. Hoigo is also a small town in Japan where there is a conference and there is a decade of dedicated to this strategy, that is 2005 to 2015. There is a disaster risk reduction. So what are the risks in a disaster? They must be identified and defined. How these risks can be reduced, can be lessened. That was the strategy developed in this HIGO framework. Then identity and assessment disaster risks. We must identify the risks and then assess the risks, evaluate the risks, know the risks. What is the degree? Which risks are heavy, higher, and dangerous risks, and which are moderate, and how can they be defined and separated? And we must have a strategy as per the groupings of risk or degree of risks. Then reduce risk factors. Fourth point is reduce risk factors. And then use of knowledge, innovation, education, etc. for this purpose. Then strengthen the disaster preparedness. So these are the features of HIGO framework in which these objectives are identified. And before that, in Yokohama strategy, we have single slogan or single feature that is saving human lives and saving property. But here we have 5 objectives in HIGO framework. These are the global scenarios so far disaster preparedness is concerned. It developed out of 2 major conferences. One is the Yokohama strategy, another is HIGO conference. And in combination, it stays on to save lives, to save property, and to use the warning systems all over the world, to use the knowledge skill all over the world, and to remain prepared, involving state and other agencies, community, local people, to reduce the risks of disasters or to reduce the dangers of disasters. Then coming to India, you will find under the impact of this global phenomena, India, we found that there were discussions. And in 10th plan, that is from 2002 to 2007, 10th five-year plan. So in 10th five-year plan, there is a separate chapter for disaster management. For the first time in plan document in post-independent India, we find that in 10th plan, there is a total chapter dedicated to disaster management. This shows the importance that Indian government or Indian state giving to disaster management. The first time we stress on disaster preparedness, how the Indian state or Indian society can prepare itself to face a natural disaster or man-made disaster, whatever it may be. Then earlier, as I have told you, in India, disaster management means relief operation. Disaster management means how relief can be distributed to the people after disaster. So before disaster, we were not prepared. We are rather ill prepared to face a disaster. That is what happened in super cyclone in 1999 in Odisha, and we all know. I don't want to go to the details there. We all know how ill prepared we were. Many people in Odisha are saying that Jagannath will protect us. Many people are saying that this will not be so severe. I have seen so many floods, cyclones in my life. we can manage no problem. But when the gravity of the situation went beyond the control of all of the state, of the society, of the community, then we could realize the dangers, risks. So there is a need of out of two important events, that is Gujarat earthquake and Odisha cyclone. There was a serious realization at the police level by the Indian state that we must prepare ourselves, we must be ready, we must be prepare ourselves with knowledge, with skill, with technology, with resources, with funding, and so many things that are required for our preparedness. This is how developed. So for the first time in 2002, in 7 5-year plan, we have this document, one chapter dedicated to this phenomena. Then 11th financial plan. In 11th financial plan, we also have serious preparations for this preparing ourselves for the disaster. Then we have disaster preparedness in India, how it came to existence or how it planned. You have heard the name of NDRF, National Disasters Response Force. You have always listening to the NDRF team. Where there is a cyclone, where there is a flood in Odisha, NDRF team is coming from Calcutta because that was the nearest headquarters. So they are being dropped with machines, with relief materials and other things. So NDRF was created under the 11th and 10th 11th finance plan and this 10th plan, 5-year plan. And then the people from CRPF are being trained. So before taking over of army to control or manage the disasters, so NDRF was created out of a pool from central paramilitary forces. Then apart from NDRF, those who are employed in NDRF or engaged in NDRF, there are other forces who are engaged in their headquarters like CRPF, BSF, etc., Industrial Security Force. So these paramilitary forces, some sections of them were also trained in disaster management. That is a kind of reserve. Then many states accepted, and Odisha one of the first few states who accepted this and created its own force of disaster management. That is OSDMA or OSDRF, Odisha State ODRAF team. We tell in Odisha ODRAF team, Odisha Disaster Response Action Force. So ODRAF team goes to everywhere. You have seen their dress, etc. They are from Odisha Reserve Police Force. Then we have regional centers in different regions. In Calcutta, that is Eastern Region headquarters, and in South, in North, in West, there are regional centers where relief materials are stored, and these people are centered. Then there is the provision of mobile hospitals. So hospitals are trained to manage disasters and send mobile hospitals with doctors and paramedical forces to render health services to the needy during a disaster. Then we have hospital preparedness. How hospitals, apart from mobile hospitals, how hospitals bed will be earmarked. Suppose you are observing now in COVID-19, this is a disaster. So mobile hospitals are going for this test, COVID test, and also hospitals are specially earmarked for which are called COVID hospital. In Kotak, Ashwini Hospital, there is a COVID hospital and other center. Now some are closed. And when there is pandemic increasing in Odisha, we converted Gram Panchayat offices or schools into temporary COVID hospitals or COVID centers, quarantine centers with minimum medical support system. Then we have preparedness plans of different departments. So those departments which are required, PWD department, water department, health department, engineering department, all are coordinating with each other. This is developed at the national level. Then India Disaster Response Network. So we computerize the system, and there is a network developed specifically for this purpose of disaster management. So these are the preparedness or charts of preparedness, 1, 2, 6, 7, or 8, that India developed to prepare itself to face a disaster. Then we have long-term and short-term planning. I have already told you in a long-term planning, we need institutional changes. That means we created the new institutions, this NDRF, OSDMA, Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, National Disaster Management Authority, and District Disaster Management Authority. So new institutions were created to prepare the administration for disaster management. Then we have policy. We need policy. We need legal framework. Now you see there is lockdown, shutdown. How this is possible? Because of the Disaster Management Act or the Disaster Management Authority. There is a lockdown, shutdown. You cannot violate that. These are quarantine centers. You have to do, or a authority have to do. Train cannot move, planes cannot move, buses cannot move. So these are the under a legal framework. Other nobody will listen or nobody will obey. So Act was created, Disaster Management Act. Then under Act there are various authorities, various people interested with the task, and there are rules and punishments for this. So we developed a legal framework and institutional framework. Then preparedness measures. What are the measures that we need to prepare ourselves? What are the measures? Means various steps. And most important is funding. Unless you have budgetary provision or budgetary allocation for these purposes, all becomes meaningless. So there must be funding earmarked from the budget for this purpose at the national level, at the state level, and at the panchayat or grassroots level. Then we have capacity building. That means you need to develop capacities. Capacities are human capacities and technical capacities. So you have to train your human resources. First, you identify human resources. That means human or men or women who will be required in disaster management. Then capacity building means training of those people in different sectors. So for particular services, how they will be trained, like training of NDRF and other personnel. Then you have community participation. So you have to prepare the community to let them participate not by force, but by their own will. So you need motivation, you need mobilization. So I will be teaching this how community participation can be successful, and what are the value system, what are the ethics, what are the culture that are most important variables or factors. I hope you understand the term variables, strategy, etc., etc. If you doubt, you can ask me, because while teaching, I don't have a scope to explain these terms. I must finish that, and after that, these are the modern terms that are we are using in public administration, in political science, and in the theories of disaster management, right? So community participation is very crucial, we observed. So in this fourth chapter, in disaster preparedness, what we saw, this idea of disaster preparedness emerged all over the globe, particularly in 1990s and 2000, or the early years of 2000. There are global conferences, global seminars, workshops, and studies by different universities. And these two programs that I have already explained to you, Wakama and AGO program, this idea developed. And in India, we also learned from them, and we developed our own idea on the basis of 10th plan document, and also on the basis of 11th Finance Commission approach. Then we created new institutions for preparedness. We created new laws for preparedness. We created new policies for preparedness. We created new human resource for preparedness. So these are the requirements, and this created. And out of these experiences since last 3 decades, we are more maturing, and we are more developed and at par with the global level to face the natural disaster. Then in the next chapter, you will find that this is disaster prevention. So what is prevention? We know, we always know, all of you know that there is a common saying, prevention is better than cure. That means if you are active, you are taking minimum health care, then there will not be health hazard or disaster in your personal life or your personal family. Suppose you have bad habit, you are addicted, you are taking drugs, you are not sleeping rightly, you are not working, you are not active, you are working, you are not working, or practicing yoga or exercise or whatever it may be. Then what will happen? You will be prone to disease. After you are subject to disease, that is very expensive, and you will face so many problems going to hospital, entire family is disturbed. So similarly, in case of disaster, prevention is very crucial. This was realized very late at the global level, and also at the national level, and in India or in Odisha. So how can this be prevented? In postmodernist approach that I was discussing earlier in the first part of my class, we need to see disasters not in isolation, but as a part of the entire problem. Why disasters are happening and happening regularly or recurring in a particular periods of time in different parts of the world. So now science and technology has given the knowledge to us that this environment, nature, functions in its own way, not by the will of the man. However powerful may be, however scientific may be, whatever may be. However powerful America may be, it cannot control the nature. It cannot destroy the nature. Nature will take revenge. This pandemic has shown, Corona has shown us, gave a great lesson. Whatever powerful you are, whatever power you have, we become helpless creatures in face of the wrath of coronavirus. So that's why prevention is very crucial in the entire management strategy of the disasters. And this became the knowledge of the most of the nations in the world. Almost all nations of the world are facing disasters, whatever the kind of disasters. So disasters are part of the whole nature. So if you prevent environmental degradation, if you prevent environmental pollution, if you prevent economic inequalities, if you prevent social segregations or inequalities or exploitations, then you can prevent natural disasters, or at least you can reduce the risks or dangers of disasters. You can save you can save maximum life with a minimum casualty or zero casualty. You can save property to get 90% of the property damaged in natural disasters can be saved, if not 100%. So that's why prevention is very important, and the chapter in this book, a paper, that is disaster prevention. So we must invest in prevention. We must spend in prevention, in developing techniques of prevention, approaches of prevention, policies of prevention, paradigms of prevention. So we must create a culture of prevention. What is culture of prevention? We must find what are the dangers to prevention, what are the risks, and then we can say we can develop a culture of prevention by our behavior, by our approach, by our idea, etc. So what is a disaster? So they are saying disaster is hazard plus vulnerability. Hazard, you know, hazard is, and plus vulnerability. If there are more vulnerable people and it is added to disaster hazard, then it becomes a disaster. That means suppose you have thatched houses. I'm just giving you the example. You have thatched houses. You have poor people in a village. There is a fire hazard, and if fire is catched or caught in one house, then it spreads to many houses. But you have if you have a pakka building in between thatched houses, then one side of thatched houses will be fireproof. Fire will not spread there because there is a breakage, there is a gap, there is a prevention. So pakka building is a prevention in between the line of thatched houses in a particular village, and that is prevention. This is simply understanding of what prevention is. So you see there are inequalities or poor people. Because of poverty, they are unable to build their pakka houses. So we need a housing scheme. So when you provided a housing scheme to the poor people, there will be no thatched houses. So if there will be no thatched houses in a village, of course, in today's time, in almost all villages, you don't find thatched houses, particularly in coastal belts. You find this local tile made of mud in tribal hamlets. They have a different kind of houses that is fireproof. So you can prevent fire by this technique. That is preparedness, or that is prevention. Then we must, how can we prevent? First and most important is we must have a hazard mapping. We must map. Map means identify. Suppose you are interested with the task of mapping poverty in your village. So you find there are 500 households in your village. First you find out of the 500 households, how many acres of land they are being owned by these people. So you categorize people. This is 1 acre land, 100 people have 1 acre land, cultivable land. Another 100 people have 2 acre land. Another 100 people have 2 acre to 3 acre land. Another 100 people have 3 acre to 4 acre or 4 acre plus. This is called mapping. So if you do educational mapping, how many boys and girls are in your village, and how many of them have passed matriculation, how many of them have passed graduation, how many of them have passed post graduation. This is mapping. So likewise, you map in Odisha what are the vulnerable areas, or what are the mapping of the disasters or hazards. So you find that out of the coastal belts from Baleshwar to Ganjam, these are prone to floods. So these are flood risk areas where there is river, where there is embankment, where there is blockage of water during rainy season, etc. So many regions you find out. That is called mapping. So hazard mapping is the first part of first part in the strategy of prevention of disasters. Then you have structural measures, that is technical inputs. You need science, you need technical knowledge for prevention of natural disasters. Natural disasters are not of the same type. There is flood, there is cyclone, there is earthquake, etc. So question is, what are crucial variables? Crucial is how to, if you go for preventing a disaster, then you must know what is the disaster, what is the nature of disaster, when is the disaster. Floods are coming in particular periods of time in a year. Earthquake is coming in 10 years, 20 years in particular periods of time in a year. So when this is recurring, that is time. This is important variable. Then how it is happening. Then when. Now when I told, then where it is happening, which parts of the country, which parts of the globe, or which parts of the state this particular disaster is happening or occurring, whether it is flood, cyclone, etc. Then who are the affected people? Who is not creating, that is not important. Important is who are being affected, or who are the most vulnerable sections in a natural disaster. In a flood, who are the most vulnerable? The poor people. If there is waterlogging, they cannot go outside. They cannot buy because they don't have money to stock. Because they don't have money to stock, they cannot buy essentials in advance. The daily wage earners or daily laborers, they cannot work in a calamity time or natural disaster time. If there is cyclone or if there is flood, they cannot go to work because work is not available. So if work is not available, they will not get a meager wage of 200, 300, whatever the price wages. They will not get, and they will go out of food. So you must identify the vulnerable sections and get ready, prepare yourself, that is state or society, to provide help to them. This is a short-term measure. But in the long-term measure, we must try to reduce their poverty. We must try to bring all these people out of this dire poverty of earning 100 rupees or 200 rupees per day, and that too not of the whole year. Agriculture laborers in Odisha are not getting wages for 365 days. This is a seasonal activity. So during seasonal agriculture, whether it is during plantation, seeding, or harvesting, they will get employment. Otherwise, all the years throughout, they will not get employment, or if they are getting employment, that is a partial employment. So in average, their 50% of the salary is reduced. So we must have to bring them out of this poverty. So these are variables: who, when, why, how. These are variables. Then planning for disaster reduction. We must plan for disaster reduction. How we plan? At the policy level, at the finance level, we must have money, and at the community level, at the people level. And then we must have structural measures. That is technical inputs or technical knowledge. Then non-structural measures. That is administrative and managerial preparedness. So this is all about preparedness for disaster management, or which is otherwise known as disaster preparedness in India, right? And then disaster prevention I explained, number 5. Then we'll go to the next chapter, because we have 15 or 16 chapters here, and we have only 5 classes. So we need at least 3-4 chapters in every class. So I continued from the last chapter, that is chapter 3, 3, 4, 5. Then we have this vulnerability analysis and risk assessment. That is a most important part of disaster management, vulnerability assessment. That means we must be able to assess who are vulnerable, why they are vulnerable, and what is the criteria of their vulnerability, and how the risk can be assessed. So in 1994, there is a United Nations disaster management training program. So they tried to define vulnerability is the degree of loss to a given element at risk resulting from a given hazard at a given security level. So point is that why these people are vulnerable. They have been defined by the risk resulting from a given hazard. Particular disaster is creating a risk and risk is being inflicted upon those people who are vulnerable. So suppose I'm explaining in giving an example that will be easier to understand. Suppose the government said family and health department, family welfare and health department said in India and in also Odisha, in the world also, WHO also said, who are vulnerable in during pandemic are prone to corona disease. Those who are 50 plus, those who are diabetic, those who have comorbid conditions, means those who are suffering from lungs disease, diabetic disease, and other serious diseases. So people with comorbid conditions, that means with other diseases, serious diseases, they are vulnerable to corona virus. People of more than 50 years age or senior citizens more than 60 years age, they are vulnerable people. They are prone to coronavirus, and if they will be infected with coronavirus, their chances of recovery is less. Chances of being cured is less than the normal people. And then the people with diabetic, those who are diabetic patient, their immunity is at the lower level, so they are more vulnerable than others to the coronavirus. So I hope you understand the term vulnerable. So when there is a flood, we must take the example of flood situation in Odisha because some or other have experienced flood in their life, I think, because you are studying post graduation, so you must have at least seen flood, right? At least from a picnic point of view, because when there is a waterlogging in Kotak Bhubaneswar road, earlier people are going to observe them or see them. So question is, when there is a flood, who are the worst sufferers? Who are the most affected? And who are the first affected? It is the poor people because they are taken to their houses are waterlogged. So they are taken to other places like school building, public buildings. So they are shifted from their home. So their mental peace is disturbed, their food pattern is disturbed, their sleep pattern is disturbed, they are in severe mental stress because they don't have money. But the others who have taka buildings, have own earnings, they are well-off people, well-off families, they can face situation from 10 to 15 days to 15 months without an extra help. So these are vulnerable groups. So vulnerability analysis, we must analyze who are vulnerable people and why they are vulnerable. So we must have a strategy that is short term and long term. Short term is to bring all these vulnerable people out of the disaster. And the long term is to reduce their vulnerability. Why they are vulnerable? To identify why they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable because of poverty, number one. They are vulnerable because of caste. They are vulnerable because of gender. Women are vulnerable. Women are sufferers. So when there is a health crisis, the topmost priority is given to boys or men. Then second priority given to women. So women are segregated in a natural disaster. Likewise in our family, because families in Odisha or India, almost all over the world, particularly in India and other developing countries, you find that families are patriarchal institutions. Who decides in family? Parents, not parents. It is father. A male person decides everything in the family. So when there is a debate in your family, whether you will study science or arts, then your boys, your brothers go to science and your sisters go to arts. This is a normal practice. Now it is changing. So that means this is reflected in disaster management. When there is a disaster and there is a limited resource, priority will go to male persons. So this is another reflection of vulnerability. So like in caste, lower caste people, they also are more vulnerable than the so-called upper caste people. So social segregation or discrimination or exploitation or division or inequality like caste and gender or community. Then economic inequalities like poverty, poor and rich. Then cultural discriminations, whether in terms of region, language, and other factors. So these has to be assessed and analyzed so that we can develop a strategy to end vulnerability. And then there is a social and organizational vulnerability. That means I have explained them. So social vulnerability or organization vulnerability. How society is prepared, how society is organized, how society is divided. We have to identify them, as I gave the example of caste, gender, uh, inequality, economic inequality, etc. Then organization, that is how our political system is organized, how democracy is there. How, if you see, there's a common complaint in every relief operation that powerful people or those who are ruling from the ruling party, they are taking out the reliefs. They are giving. I do not want to name them. I have experience, I have information, and I have also knowledge about that. In one of the districts in Odisha, when there is a distribution of this, what we call a palo, this cover, plastic cover, and then there is instruction that the people who voted for the ruling party or who are supporters of the ruling party, they will be given powers and not opposition parties. Those who are opposing, they will not be given. This is a strange thing happened. The common happen throughout India. You will find in everywhere there is a complaint on that. So that is a kind of discrimination. That means our political system is ill prepared. So far, vulnerability analysis and prevention is concerned. Our society is ill prepared. So in a long-term strategy, we have to identify these weaknesses, these vulnerabilities, and we have to redress them. We have to reduce them, if not abolish them. We cannot abolish caste. You cannot abolish caste. You will be astonished to know a Delhi University professor who belongs to a Dalit caste. Recently, I am not talking of Kansiram or I am not talking of Ambedkar. I am talking of recently, Delhi University professor was not allowed home on rent in Delhi. Don't you think of other small cities or two tier, three tier cities? So question is, unless you cannot abolish caste immediately from your mind, from your practice. But so far disaster is concerned, if you want to prevent disaster in a holistic manner, in an inclusive manner, covering all kinds of people, all kinds of groups, based on equality and democratic understanding, values and culture, then you have to prevent that. First, how can you prevent that? Unless you know that, how can you prevent that? So you have to identify, analyze, and accept them. Then you develop the policy. Then policy can be scientific, right? Then what is the formal political structure and informal? Then that's the value system. What is the value system in a society? What is the culture in a society? What is the attitude in a society? What is the behavior in a society? Suppose you are going in a bus. A girl is going in a bus. A boy makes a bad comment on him, boy or whatever, a man or whatever. What is the reaction of common people? There are two types of reactions. I am going, I should, my attitude is that let them do, that is their business. Conductor will solve the problem, they will see, or that is the problem of the girl or that boy. Why should I interfere? This is a bad attitude. That societal reaction, response to a personal tragedy is poor. So if your response to a personal tragedy is poor, how can your response to a collective tragedy or a tragedy like a disaster can be good? Cannot be good. You just see the example of farmers' movement in Delhi. People in Punjab, how their solidarity is. Their sons and daughters or grandsons and granddaughters who are working in America, Canada, Japan, German, France, and every foreign country, they're coming with their families. They're sitting in this -4 degree, -2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree temperature. That is their solidarity. So if there is strong solidarity among a population, among a society, among a regional identity or a linguistic group, then their response to disaster will be very powerful, very positive, very intervening. Suppose there is a disaster in your group and in your village, in your area, one of your villagers got her or his home destroyed in fire. Then if the entire village will have a positive reaction, they will contribute money, material, etc. to build their houses. And if they say, no, that is then their business. So in Odisha, my observation, my understanding, this is not in book or paper, my understanding is that in Odisha, we are very much poor in this culture of solidarity. We don't have a solidarity feeling or brotherhood feeling or sisterhood feeling among ourselves. We are divided by many factors and we are unable to face a disaster. So motivation, mobilization, commitment, ideology, these are not fact. These are the factors which are very poor. But in some parts of disaster management in '99, particularly in Jagatsinghpur, Paradip, and all those areas, we have seen many people have come forward to help them. So from 99 to this 2020, we have this how many years? 2000, 2020, 2 decades. We found there is a degradation in this culture. Everybody is dependent on government. Everybody is asking for government. Everybody is going to the government people. You please give us all these relief materials, etc., etc. We are not ready to do some works. If there is a road damage in a flood, and they are waiting for the government. If this can be possible by the village people, they are not going for a repair. So this is called the social capital, which we call it as samajika punji. This is our understanding. This is our capability. This is our commitment. This is in our value, culture. So if that is very strong, then a nation, a state, a society can face such a situation, can bring situation created out of a disaster to minimum. So that is what we require, apart from funding, apart from technique, apart from capabilities, apart from strong state, apart from strong bureaucracy, apart from strong local government. We also need a strong society, strong people. Strong means in terms of their mind, in terms of their attitude, in terms of their mobilization, in terms of their culture, in terms of their commitment, in terms of their love to their community, love to their fraternity, love to their village, love to their area, love to their state, or love to their people. Suppose in Odia we have created Odia identity, but when it comes to practice in times of disaster, we don't show solidarity. So this has happened in their village. Why should we wear it? I just gave the example of bus, etc. So that is a very crucial variable or crucial factor, and we are largely fatalistic. What is fatalistic? Bhagyavadi. God has created Earth, God has done this, I don't have this in Bhagya, mo Bhagya re nahi. So this is a very negative culture that has creeped into minds of many people, particularly if I talk in Odisha. I cannot say whether it is not there, it is there. To what degree it is there, I don't know, but don't be fatalistic. So we have to overcome the crisis. We have to go ahead. What life is teaching us, what this pandemic is teaching us. The death is always always defeated by life. Frustration is always defeated by hope. So that mindset, that attitude, that culture must be there in a collective manner. That does not have any impact on that. We must develop this attitude, this culture, this mindset in ourselves as a collective body. ଓଡ଼ିଆ ଲୋକଙ୍କର ଏଇଟା ହେବା ଦରକାର, so that ଓଡ଼ିଶା ପ୍ରାକୃତିକ ବିପର୍ଯ୍ୟୟକୁ ସାମ୍ନା କରିପାରିବ, ମୁକାବିଲା କରିପାରିବ, ତାର ସତ୍ସାହସ ଅଛି. So one positive thing has developed in these years out of the good management of natural disasters after 99, that now we are confident that as though we are poor people, though we are developing people, though we are a backward state in terms of industry and other factors, we are very strong enough to face the natural disaster. This has become part of life. So a psyche or a consciousness has been created in our minds that these are not dangerous to us. We are overconfident. We are brave. We can face that. We have faced so many cyclones, so we need not worry about another cyclone. We have so many floods. We need not worry about another flood. Whatever dangerous may be, whatever its dimension or scope may be, ଯେତେ ଗଭୀର ବ୍ୟାପକ ବନ୍ୟା ହଉ ବା ବାତ୍ୟା ହଉ, ଆଉ ଆମେ ଡରୁନୁ. ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ମାନସିକ ଚିନ୍ତାଟା ଆମ ଭିତରେ ବୃଦ୍ଧି କରିଛି, that is a reflection of a good attitude. But there are so many bad attitudes, and you young people, young generation must learn that. In spite of fighting with each other, you must be invited to go take ahead this state or this country into a new horizon. And these disasters should not break our solidarity, should not put a break on our journey towards development. So ବିକାଶର ରାସ୍ତାରେ ବାଧା ହବା ଉଚିତ ନୁହେଁ, ବାଧକ ହବା ଉଚିତ ନୁହେଁ କି ପ୍ରାକୃତିକ ବିପର୍ଯ୍ୟୟ. We need money, that is right. We need technology, that is right. We need preparedness, that is right. We need knowledge about natural disasters, that is right. At the same time, we need mentality to fight that. ତାକୁ ଲଢ଼େଇ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ମାନସିକତା ମଧ୍ୟ ଦରକାର. So even a well-off state, in a rich state, rich society, without this mentality cannot fight disasters. Even a poor state, poor society, poor people, if they have a strong willpower, strong mentality, good attitude, positive attitude, attitude of solidarity, friendship, fraternity, then they can manage a disaster. गोटे दरिद्र समाज बा दरिद्र राष्ट्र बा दरिद्र राज्य जदि तार मानसिक चिंताधारा बा शक्ति सबल अच्छी ताले से प्राकृतिक विपर्यय को भल भाव मुकाबला करें ओवरकम कर अतिक्रम करें जदि गोटे सबल शक्ति जमी व्हाट वी सी इन अमेरिका इन Katrina was a hurricane, dangerous cyclone that destroyed America, parts of America. So this is the strategy, this is the understanding that we learned from these lessons in these last 6-7 chapters. So I hope you on our class we have finished. Do you have any questions or doubt or any? Hello, अरे शुणुच ना नहीं?
Yes sir.
हाँ मोबाइल छाड़ छुड़ी पड़े मुझे कौन कार्य शुभुनि कहीं कार्य की पाठ बेड़ शुभुनि
डिजास्टर रिस्क मैनेजमेंट ऊपर गोटे कोर्स बाहर करथिला ता ऊपर किछि कहि परिबे
ये बाहर करथला
इसरो
हाँ इसरो बाहर करथला डिजास्टर रिस्क मैनेजमेंट इसरो रो डिजास्टर रिस्क मैनेजमेंट इसरो रो प्लानिंग जो सैटेलाइट पिक्चर ସେଇଠୁ ଦେଇପାରିବ ସିଏ ପ୍ଲସ୍ ଆଇଆଇଟି ମାନେ ବମ୍ବେ ଆଇଆଇଟି ଅଲଗା ଆଇଆଇଟି ଡେଭଲପ କରିଛନ୍ତି ସୋ ମେନି କୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଜାପାନ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସିଟି ମାନଙ୍କର ଅଛି ଏଇ ଯାହା ଆମେ ପଢୁଛନ୍ତି ସେଇ କୋର୍ସ ଟାଇପ ର ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ କୋର୍ସ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ତାର କଣ ମଡ୍ୟୁଲ୍ସ ଅଛି ଆଇ ଡୋଣ୍ଟ ନୋ ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି ଛୋଟିଆ ମଡ୍ୟୁଲ ନଥିବ ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ ଏ କୋର୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ ସୋ ମେନି courses of different universities in the world they have disaster management courses and also chapters in the public administration chapter achi police chapter achi पब्लिक पॉलिसी रे चैप्टर अच्छी ये जो गोटाए गोटे पेपर अच्छी गोटे एंटायर कोर्स अच्छी डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एरिया स्कोप हैज बिकम सो वाइडर so now it has become a separate course
सर मुझे कोर्स करथिल कि तो मते ठीक से किछि बुझा पड़नतला सेति पय पचारि
ये अच्छी इसरो रे जेमिते मॉडल पढुछन सेई टाइप रो व्हाट इज डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट तार प्रिपेयर कोर्स रे हम कोन मेन देखछन हिस्ट्री ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट what are the global reactions, what are the national reactions, what is disaster preparedness, what is disaster prevention, what is disaster vulnerability analysis, then financial aspects, political aspects, social aspects एगुडा देखछन
ओके सर थैंक यू सर
आउ हला ठीक अछि
ओके
जुआउ तो
सर
आउ आदि के जन छथि कि पढलेन बना को
7 जन
अच्छा ओके ओके थैंक यू
थैंक यू सर
थैंक यू
हला तो कुछ नहीं तो
नाइस
थैंक you